Hello folks. Some of you have asked for the code for my level editor that I made for the platforming game, which I've uploaded in the past. But since then, I've worked on it quite a bit more and made quite a lot of improvements. So I just wanted to do an update on it and to show the code for this new level editor. The first main thing is that it's now scrollable. So the games that you can make with this are not limited to just the visible game window. You can set as many columns as you want in it. The other thing is I've made it a little bit more user-friendly. So the tiles themselves are selected over here. I've just got them as a whole bunch of individual buttons. The tiles and all these images are open source, so I'll put a link to that in the description. They're not mine, I just downloaded them. But once you select them, you can just click and drag and pretty much just create a map. Right-clicking deletes everything. And at the same time, I've got this level counter up here, so the arrow keys change the level that I'm on, so I can load in some of the levels that I've created already. For example, this one is for the game that I'm currently working on, and you can see I can just scroll along and see the whole world. And likewise, I can just carry on through level 2 and level 3 and so on. So there are existing level editors available that are far better than this and more polished, but I just wanted to create my own one. So if you just want the code for this, then I'll put that in the description. Feel free to download that. But if you want to understand how I've coded it and how it all works, then I'm just going to go through the code just now. So I'll close this down and I'll start off with a new window. And as always, you just start off with your imports. So import PyGame, and then you want to start PyGame by initializing it. So we say pygame.init. So that's it kind of kicked off. The next thing is to create the game window, which is that screen that you just saw. So I need to define a few variables for it. I'll add a comment to say game window, and then I'll define the width and the height variables. So these are going to be constant, so I will do them in all caps. Screen underscore width equals 800, and screen underscore height is equal to 640. So these are just the sizes I picked for that one. You can adjust this just to base around your own monitor size. But remember, what I had there was the game window where you could click and actually create the map, but then I also had a margin area on the right hand side which had all the individual tile buttons, and then I had a margin area on the bottom which I had my load and save buttons. So I need to create a couple more variables for these margin areas. So I'll say lower margin, that was 100 pixels tall, and the side margin, that was a further 300 pixels. So now I can combine these when creating my overall display window. So to create this window, you have to assign it to a variable. In my case, I'm going to call it screen. And then you say it equals pygame.display.set underscore mode. And in here, you need to put in those width and height variables. So in my case, they're actually going to be a combination of the two. So my width for the overall window is going to be my screen width plus the side margin. And then my height is going to be my screen height plus the lower margin. So with that done, this is going to create just a blank PyGame screen. I want to give it a title, so I'm going to say pygame.display.set underscore caption, and I will call this level editor. So if I run this code now, it just pops up for a second and then just disappears again. And the reason for that is it's just running through the code from top to bottom, comes to the end, and that's it over. So although this is not a game, it needs to run in the same methodology. So that means that I need some kind of constant loop for everything to just stay on the screen and allow some kind of interaction. Typically, what I use for this is a while loop, which is based on a condition that is always true. So I start off with my condition, which is just a variable that I'm going to set to true. So this is a Boolean variable that I've called run. So I've said run equals true, and then I can say while run, which means that as long as the run condition is true, then everything that is indented within this loop is going to continue running. If I run this code now, it will just freeze up the game because it's always going to be stuck within this run condition. There's no way to exit it. So before I do that, I want to make sure that I have a way out. So things like mouse clicks, button presses, and even mouse movements are all events within PyGame. And PyGame has an event handler that allows you to iterate through all the events it's recording and look for any particular ones that you're interested in. To do that, I just use a for loop. I say for event in pygame.event.get, which allows me to filter through every one of the events and then look for a particular one. The one that I'm looking for is when I click the X button in the top right corner. So that means that I'm exiting the game or exiting the game window. That event is called PyGame quit. That means that I can say if event.type, so the type of event, equals pygame.quit, all caps, then that means that that button has been clicked, therefore I can exit this game loop. So remember, this is running on the condition that this run variable is set to true. So it goes to say then if I set this variable to false, then that means that's going to kick me out of this while loop and it's going to end. So just to wrap it all up, at the very end, I just say pygame.quit. So note that this isn't indented because it's not part of the while loop. This line is only run once the while loop is complete, i.e. we've exited it. So I can run this again, and now you can see I've got my game window. It says level editor because I set that caption, and if I click the X, it closes out. So that's the basics of the game. That's kind of the basic structure put in place. Now I can start to actually add in some of the features. The first thing I want to do is put in a background. Although the level editor doesn't really need a background, it gives me a nice reference point of where I am because it scrolls as I move the map around. So to do that, there was a bunch of different images that I loaded. It looks like one picture, but it's actually a number of them overlaid on top of each other. Before my game loop, but underneath where I've created my screen, I'm going to have a little section which I'll comment off by saying load images. And within here, I'm going to start loading those images. The first one is called well, these are just variable names that I'm going to give to them, but they kind of match the name of the image itself. This one is called pine1 underscore img, and to load an image into it, I say pygame.image.load, and then I give it the location of that file. So in my case, I have all my images stored in a folder called img, and then within that folder I have another one called background. So you may have completely different folders. It all depends on where you're going to put these images. Lastly, I put in the name of the actual image, which is pine1.png. And at the very end, I put convert underscore alpha. That loads in my first image. Then I just copy this down and I change this to 2 because I had a pine2 as well. Then I copy this down a third time. Now I change this entirely to mountain. Make sure I change the image name as well to mountain. And then the last image was called sky. So change this to sky image, but the actual name is sky underscore cloud. And that's just because there were 2 variations of it. So with these loaded in, I can now start putting them onto the screen. But of course, until I do that, nothing happens. So if I run this code, they're in the memory, but they're not coming up on the screen. Because there's a few of them, I'm just going to create a function to allow me to draw them. So I'll say create function for drawing background. And these functions are created by just saying def for define and then a name of a function. I'm going to call mine draw underscore bg. It doesn't need any arguments, so I leave the brackets empty. And then after that, I can start putting these images onto the screen. So to put an image onto the screen, you first of all call the name of your game window, which in my case is just called screen. So I say screen. And then the function for putting images onto it is blit. Then the first argument is the name of the image. Now I'm going to put these on in reverse order. So I'm going to start with the sky first of all. I'll say put on my sky image first. Then I need to give it an x and a y coordinate. So I'll put another set of brackets. The x coordinate is 0. The y coordinate is also 0. I want this to start in the top left corner of the screen. If I run this again, nothing's actually going to happen because although I've created the function, I have not called it. I need to come into my game loop and make sure that I call that function. So I say draw bg, but again, if I run this, nothing still happens. It is now calling the function and it is trying to display this, but what happens within the code is throughout this game loop, I'm going to be calling a whole bunch of different functions for updating things and drawing things on the screen. Once all of that is done, I want to tell PyGame to update the display. And I'm going to do that at the very end of my game loop, so it just does it once at each iteration. And the line for that is pygame.display.update. And once that is added, if I run the code again, you see that it takes those images, in this case it's only one for now, and when it gets to the very end of this while loop iteration, it takes all of the changes that I've made during that time, and then it updates the screen with them. Now that I've got my sky image, I can put the mountain over it. I'll come back up to my draw background, and the next one is going to be again screen.blit, but this time it's mountain image. Now the coordinates can't be exactly the same as the sky, so I still wanted to start on the left hand side of the screen. So the x coordinate is 0, but for the y coordinate, I'm going to actually start counting from the bottom of the screen. So that means I need to take the screen height, which is as big as my screen is, and minus mountain underscore image.get_height. So this will just move the image up a little bit and basically just put it right at the bottom of the screen above the little margin. So if I run this again, you remember there was a margin down here, and now the mountain image is coming up. So now I'm just going to shift it up the way, and I'll shift it by 300 pixels. So let's run that again, and now you can see the mountains stacked up with the sky behind it. So that's kind of giving me that layered effect, and the next I'm just going to add on the 2 pine images. So I can just copy this line down and just change, indent that properly, and I just change this to pine 1 image. And then I just change this bit here to pine 1 image. And then for this corner, I want to offset it by a little bit less, so I'll put 150. Run that again, and now you can see that's layering over it as well. So last one, just copy this down and do the same again, change this to pine 2, change that to pine 2, and then I'm not going to offset it at all. So delete that, and now when I run it, you can kind of see I've now got this layered effect with my background coming in as I want it.